we are going to be having conversations about astrology. We have a wonderful guest here. We're going to put the show out into the world for people to have a new perspective. And we're going to have a prayer and a healing circle at 11:30 at the halftime. So stay tuned for a full 1 hour of awesome. I'm not going to call this a roundtable discussion, but I probably should, because what we're going to be doing is having conversations around astrology. And our show, Camille Conti, You Can Have It All, is all about creating the life you choose to experience. And whether that means that your goals and dreams are to follow your divine calling and achieve your soul mission, whether you feel that your divine calling is to make a positive difference in the world, whether you feel it's to be a really good parent to your children. And when maybe you feel you're done parenting, then you move into your next soul mission, because a lot of us have several soul missions and they kind of layer one after another. And some of them stay with us our whole lifetime. And then sometimes one gets completed and a new one folds in. And on my journey as New York's Divine Channel, following my divine calling, I have discovered that there's lots of tools out there to help us along our journey to achieving our soul mission, our dreams, our goals, our divine purpose. Some people like calling it that. And what I've noticed is sometimes these tools that we have available to us can be very helpful for letting us know just exactly what we should be focusing on. So for myself personally, when you go to a medical doctor office, and well, at least for myself, when I take myself or a family member and they give us a diagnosis, and they tell us, okay, here's what's going on and here's what's going to happen. It's never good, by the way, when it's a diagnosis. I then look at, they get their little tools out. They have their thermometer. They take your temperature. They tell you have a fever. This is what you need to do. You need to drink more liquids. And here's some medicine we're going to give you for your fever. And so they give you the facts, and then they give you an actual list of things you have to do to solve it, fix it, repair it, turn it around. And I also believe, for me personally, that sometimes you can accidentally let them have too much power over your beliefs in your life. Because if if you go to the doctor and they say you have cancer, you're going to die in 6 months. Well, if you believe it, that you might just go home and die in 6 months because you decided to just believe their diagnosis and that's going to be your destiny. Okay. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as, okay, currently in the moment, in my current status, I have A, B, C, D going on. And the choices I'm making, the way I'm living my life, and the things I've already done in the past that have brought me to this point are now causing me to be in this situation or predicament that if I don't do something different, then I would die in 6 months, according to what the doctor says. So for me, it's okay, what are we going to do different? Now we're going to go make a lifestyle change. We're going to start possibly eating different. We're going to start praying different. We're going to do some self-hypnosis and some NLP daily. A lot of people like to call that self-visualization and self-positive affirmation, self-talk. And you're going to put yourself on a regime. I know myself, I would be doing a ton of research, reading everything I could, and then creating a new regime for myself. And so I teach all my students that in my academy, that you use these different tools to find out the facts of what's going on and then deal with it. So for me personally, when I went to my first astrology reading years ago, and I found out about that I'm a Gemini, and then I found out a whole bunch of other information, because, there's a lot more to know than just you're a Gemini or a Virgo or a Pisces, right? And Carol Ruth is here. She's going to be sharing some stuff with us soon. I have her as our celebrity guest on astrology today. And she's also got a great event coming up next weekend we'll let you know about. But I want you to know how I believe that it plays a role in helping us with our lives. So when I got my reading, I found out all the pros and all the cons for me, like as all the different things that were going on and the way the stars were aligned when I was born, basically on the exact day, the time, the year, the location in which I lived in the world and was born in, and all of that. And so some of it I liked. I was like, oh, good. This is all supporting me with my personal goals and dreams. And this is going to help me with my divine purpose, because I already knew my divine calling when I was 19 years old. That's a whole different story for a different day. And so I was like, okay, great. But then there was this other list of things that I found out in my astrology reading that were not supporting me in my goals and dreams. Like Geminis have a lack of focus. They always have 100 different things going on at a time. And so, and there's a few other things, but at the same time, Geminis are really good on stage. They're very charismatic. They are able to manage a lot of things. So for me, what I did with my astrology reading is I said, all right, these are the things I'm glad about. Great. Here's the things I'm going to focus on. So I went to work and I made sure that those things that were my weaknesses, I like to call them strengths and weaknesses, right? I made sure that I was working on my weaknesses, and I had a strategic plan of how I was going to overcome them and become better in that area. So what the tool of astrology did for me is it gave me my diagnosis, basically, or it took my temperature and it told me where I have a fever and where I don't. And then I was also able to pray about it and do my self-hypnosis and my NLP, which is your self-visualization and your self-affirmation, so I could turn things around. I know when I found out about Mercury retrograde and all those things, and I'm kind of sharing this because then when Carol's going to be able to chime in soon, when I ask her to chime in, I remember when I found out about all that stuff, I was like, oh, great. That's just wonderful. Lovely. So what I realized is it's good to know, because then when you know that the stars are not all aligned in your favor and Mercury retrograde is going to try to screw up everything for your paperwork if you're trying to buy a house or whatever, all these things. To me, I didn't always look at it as that this astrology tool was going to tell me what to do, when to do it, how to do it. But what I did know is it was going to tell me where there was interference, where there was going to be potential blockages. And so then I knew, all right, I'm going to be really praying this thing in, because maybe timing for my soul calling, my divine purpose, and maybe when I'm listening to my higher self, all my guardian angels and guides, my spiritual counsel, they're telling me, you got to do this now. And I'm going, all right, well, now I know all the things, because whenever you're going to make a big move in your life, or even a small move, right, you're looking at what's helping you and what's not helping you. So what I did is I really made sure that I played up my positives, the things that were helping, and then I worked on the things that I knew were already going to be an issue, because my astrology reading told me that. But there's other tools I used as well. This is one of them. So for me, being that this is my show where I teach my students how to change your life and make sure that you have it all, that you create the life that you want to experience, I want to share with you my professional and long life take on how to use this tool to help your life. So it's not, I'm a psychic medium, I'm a divine channel, a medical intuitive, and I have a lot of gifts and abilities. However, I'll tell you, I'm the first one to tell you, even though I can read your mind and get all that information, the way to predict the future is to create it. You don't go and get a reading so that you can have your fortune told to you, because what you do is you go and you have a reading to find out what is going on in your life right now. And everything that you have done up to this point has brought you to this place. And so you find out, okay, if you don't change anything, here's what's going to happen. And you might like it. You're going to meet the guy of your dreams and be married in 1 year and have 3 kids, and you're going to be happier than ever. All right, good. Keep doing what you're doing. Or the reading says, if you don't change something, you're going to be dead in a month, because look at what you're doing. You're smoking, you're drinking, you're doing drugs, and you barely eat any food. if you don't start eating some nutritional food and drop some of these bad habits, you're going to kill yourself. All right. So does that mean that that's my fortune? I'm going to go home and just wait to die in 1 month? No, it means wake up call. Ding, 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 red flags, bells going off and sirens. You need to have a new strategic plan in your life and change some things about your life and hurry up and do it now is what the readings are for. So that you can now do everything you need to do as far as behavior wise, thought pattern wise, mindset wise, and then self-hypnosis, NLP, to change the outcome to align with your soul mission and your goals and your dreams. And so I'm happy to have Carol Ruth here today, who's been practicing astrology and psychic readings for 45 years. And she has an event coming up next weekend as well that we'll let you know about, so that you have yet another tool on understanding what's good and what's not good going on, so that you know how to take action. It's all about taking action. I'm completely against believing that you just go get a reading, then go home and wait for it to all happen. Well, if you like it, great. But if it's bad news, then go home and create a strategic plan, get some consultations from other people to do all of your praying, meditating, listening to God and your spiritual counsel, and start working on your self-care and all the things that you need to do. So with all that said, I'd like to open up into conversations about astrology with Carol Ruth, and I'd like other people to chime in too. I'm going to be asking for some people to offer maybe how astrology has helped them in their life as well. Okay, so with no further ado, I'd love to introduce my friend, Carol Ruth. Carol, how are you doing today? Oh, you got to turn your microphone on. The little mute button, if you click it, then your microphone will come on and we'll be able to hear you. So far,
okay.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. So what has been your most favorite experience when you were able to give out an astrology psychic reading to somebody, and then somehow God was so kind and gracious to you that you were allowed to find out the positive outcome later on about how they used the information that you gave them in the astrology reading, and they were able to go home and change some things and turn their life around and improve it because they had that diagnostic assessment that gave them the wake-up call, so that they had to go and change something in their life to get better results from their life?
Well, listen, it happens more than you can imagine.
Good.
I can't think of one, because maybe once a week someone will tell me
Good. Awesome.
everything you said happened or whatever.
Or hope I'm looking for the people who are able to say, well, I was able to go home and do different things with my life because I didn't like what was going to happen, and I fixed my life because I went and did my prayers or my self-hypnosis, or I took action and I stopped drinking and I got serious about my life, or I started working on focus issues because I found out I was a Gemini and that I'm predisposed to it, so I'm going to have to work harder. Do you have people like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Now this week I read for man from Bosnia and his wife.
Oh wow.
And I've read for him maybe 6 times now in, say, the last 4 years. And he comes back because he trusts me, because he feels, because he feels what I'm giving him is useful for him and his family.
And what was he able to do? Did he give you one example of something that he was able to turn around or fix or achieve in his life?
He smiles more. He's not as anxiety prone as he was. And he's looking for to make more decisions. He wants to go back to Bosnia to see his parents, which are still there.
Wow.
And so, this is a debatable issue right now because it's very close to the trouble spots in the world.
Yeah.
This is a decision he's going to have to make about when he will go.
Now, what's an
Now,
example? Can I just
I
interrupt
told
you for a
him,
minute? Can you
well,
give
I
me an
told him from
example for the
astrology that he should wait until 2024 to do it. Okay.
okay.
Uh-huh.
So, are you able to hear me? I'm not sure if you're able to
Yeah,
hear me because I am going to be interrupting you once in a while. And I
sure.
don't know if we have a time delay or if you're catching my words too on this end. Or is it feeling
Nope.
normal?
I hear you from my earpods.
Okay, cool. All right. So my question to you is, uh, did you, when you told him when to go,
Mhm.
did you give him any advice on, well, if you do go sooner, then you're going to have to do a bunch of things. You're going to have to pray. You're going to have to talk to God, all the angels and guides. You're going to have to ask them for a miracle to support you on this because you already know there's going to be some things going on. And
Right.
so let me give you some tools on what you could do. There's also self-hypnosis, there's NLP, but prayers, covers everything because praying is also self-hypnosis and NLP.
Right.
So did you give them some tools on, well, if you want to go against what the stars are telling us, how astrology is showing us, then here's what you're going to have to do? Or did
Um,
he just want to know what's my easy path? I'm going to go whenever. And he didn't care about his own timing. He just wanted to hear it from an astrology perspective.
I believe he wanted to know when it was better to go.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
that sounds good. I like that
Mhm.
because it's about making sure that we use all our different consultants because Carol, you and I are basically consultants, right? And
Right.
then we're teachers as well. And
Right.
so it's about people, you and I and everyone else having the right consultants that they trust and the teachers that they trust, and then using these tools to the best of their ability. So for instance, I'm going to say something to you, Carol, right now, the housing market is ridiculous, right? And so
Yep.
I know one of the things in astrology is that we can find out in our own personal astrology path, our own personal astrology reading chart. I know they call it a chart, right? I
Mhm.
know that it can tell us like when the best times are to make big purchases.
Yep.
Um, and it can tell us when the best time is to get into a new relationship and when it isn't. And that's on a personal level, and that the chart tells you that. Then I know there's also things that affect everyone, like a Mercury retrograde. Everybody's being affected by that, and that
Right.
messes with. I know it messes with a lot of things like electronics and stuff, but also paperwork and relationships. Like if you start a new relationship inside of one, it's never going to be as easy. So, what I chose to do is I'm aware of it, but if I know that it's something that God is telling me to do now, then I just know that I'm going to put that extra special prayer and request mercy and grace and a blessing. And almost like, yeah, can you please sneak this in under the radar, even though we got a Mercury retrograde, and make it work? And I've had it happen very successfully for me many times by doing that. But at least I was smart enough to consult my astrologist. So I knew to put that prayer in because I don't think it would have worked so well had I not done that, you know? And so with this housing market right now, literally in the Rochester, New York area and the Western New York, actually, the Western New York area where we're from, you and I, Carol, a house sells within 5 days of going up on the market. And that's actually not as fast as other markets. There's other markets that they're selling in 3 days. And then there's some markets where they're selling in -3, -11, and -16, which means it sells before it ever goes on the market because the real estate agent already hands it off to the next person and it never has a for sale sign on it.
Mhm.
So, if you're a person that's trying to buy a house right now, and that perfect house and the deal is there and the money and everything, I don't think I'm going to pay attention to Mercury retrograde right now. I think that you're just going to seize the moment because you're told that. You also, are aware because there's low inventory right now. There's hardly any houses to buy at the moment, and it's cheaper to rent than it is to buy in almost every state in the country, except for like 3 or 4 states where it's actually not cheaper. So I always say, let's take all these tools into perspective. We've got our psychic readings, we've got our astrology readings, we've got our medical intuitive readings, we've got our acupuncture, then we've got our medical doctor who they don't give you a reading, but they give you a diagnosis. To me, that's another kind of a reading, but it's the legal thing that, you know, our country stands by the medical diagnosis, right? So we have to look at that differently as far as what we're allowed to claim or not claim about it. But I think when we get all these different readings and consultants and diagnosis from all these people, we still have to look at the big picture of, but what is God speaking into my heart right now? I spoke to God. God told me it's time right now. Because oftentimes I'll get a message, do it right now. And it's like, well, I've had a long enough life now because I'm in my 50s to know that I always regret it when I don't listen to my inner voice and my inner guidance. And when I do listen to it, I'm always happy that I listened to my inner guidance. And I'm like, oh, thank God I was listening and I wasn't blowing it off. You know, and the older you get, the more you get good at just listening and not trying to ignore the information coming in. And you get better at hearing the voice of your angels, and or some people call it your angels and guides, some people call it God, some people call it your inner guidance or your inner knowing or your higher self. There's different ways to, but the better you get at that, then the better you can create your healthy, happy life and your victory life. So with all that said, Carol, when you think about offering somebody their astrology reading, I'm happy to hear that you do an actual consultation with it, because, you know, somebody like me, I know you said, Camille, you better focus on being focused because Geminis have a hard time at that, right? Okay.
Yep.
So that's what I love about it, is it just basically breaks down what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and where you better put more energy into transforming yourself over here in order to get what you want out of life. Because I know myself, I went to work at it and I am very focused. I have a few businesses. They are very successful. They're climbing higher and higher every year. And I remember even my father at a young age was going, Camille, the devil is in the details. And I know it's because he saw that that part of me needed to come clearer, that details had to be addressed and your organization had to be addressed, because some people are really good at like getting out there and talking on stage like me, right? But then they're not good at the details. And so I, over 37 years in business, figured out how to, okay, Camille, you're going to have to do the stuff you don't like doing. And that's not fun if you want to get to do the stuff you love doing, because the yucky stuff gives you permission to do the fun stuff. So how do you think about that with astrology, Carol?
Well, I'll tell you, being an astrologer, I don't live by it.
Yeah.
I use my inner voice all the time. And then when I have an event in my life that I've, had a result, whether it's good or bad, then I'll go and look where was everything. And if I can make a change at that time, because I believe that no matter what decision you make, you can always change your mind and do something else that
Yeah.
might be better. Yeah.
Yes. Then I actually took a little time. You're going to laugh, Carol. I took a little bit of time and I decided I'm just going to ignore all this Mercury retrograde and stuff because I don't want to deal with it. And maybe if I don't know about it, then I won't psych myself out and it won't affect me. So I tried that for a while. Oh, that did not work. Because I then would be like, what's everything going? Everything's crashing and burning. What's going on? My computer isn't working. My stuff didn't get emailed over on time. And so it was like, you tried to ignore Mercury retrograde. That wasn't a good idea. So then I went back to, all right, I'm going to pray that stuff. I'm going to pray my things, whatever I'm doing, to get, I'm asking for God to take I'm asking for God's angels to come in. Can you please hand deliver this on time accurately? I know we have a Mercury retrograde, but I'm calling in a favor. And so I got good at calling in favors. Have you ever done that, Carol?
Once in a while, but let me say something. All the planets go retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
And Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, and it is Mercury, the planet, is the ruler of the sign of Gemini. So you
Mm-hmm.
might be more affected than others. Okay. There's
Ah,
another thing.
right. Yes, you did tell me that.
There's 12 houses in the chart.
Right.
And so when Mercury goes retrograde, it depends on what house it's in.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So it will
Right.
affect everyone in a different way at the same time. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, you might have Gemini in the first house, someone else has it in the sixth house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's affecting a different part of your life,
Yeah.
even though it's there for everybody. It's also a time of reflection. The retrograde planets give you time to go back and reevaluate or recapitulate or redo something. So it's
Okay.
not as awful as it sounds.
No, no, not at all. And then what I figured out how to do is I got better. I got stealthier at praying correctly because what I realized is, and doing cleansing and clearing, because I realized that, okay, I've got a project going on that I'm working on. I'm going to cleanse and clear the energy over it. I'm going to bless it. And then I'm going to ask God to like part the waters and put the hand of blessing upon it and make it come to fruition and grow and flourish, regardless of anything going on, that we're going to have mercy and grace upon this project, whatever it is. It could be a new relationship because you're getting married. It could be a business that you're launching. It could be a house you're buying. It could be anything. Right. And so I got really good at, okay, we got to cleanse and clear. We have to put boundaries and shields around. We have to do centering and grounding. And we have to do our praying and meditating. And we've got to really listen to our higher self and our guardian angels and guides. So what I really figured out is we have to really intentionally live, because if we're not intentionally living, we're accidentally just letting life happen to us.
Well, let
What do
me
you
say,
think of that?
let me say that the moon cycle is a 27 and a half day cycle. So
Mm-hmm.
every 2.5 days, the moon is changing sign. Now, the moon rules people.
Mm-hmm.
It rules how the people are reacting today. Now, I
Okay.
believe the moon is going from Gemini to Cancer today. So
Mm-hmm.
now Gemini was, let's get it done. Let's communicate. Let's send emails, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer is your intuition kicks in.
Okay.
Maybe domestic things will happen. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
people are going to go buy something for the home, that kind of thing.
Okay.
When you're in the mall like I am, you
Mm-hmm.
see the type of people who's carrying bags, where is the moon today? What are
Okay.
they actually buying today? So
Mm-hmm.
in the United States chart, the moon is in Aquarius, which is the sign of freedom.
Oh, okay.
So the people of the USA want freedom at all costs. They
No.
do not like to be told what to do.
Well, I like that our country, like, it's cool that the countries actually have an astrology reading too.
Right,
And so, and it
right,
actually is true. That is how the United States is. We do want our freedom, and
right,
we do just about anything to make sure we have it. So
right.
that's very cool.
And another interesting thing, you may have heard this at one of the fairs because people have been talking about it for at least 2 years. Pluto is returning to the place in the USA chart. The
Ah,
cycle of Pluto is 248 years, and 246 years ago was 1776. So a lot of people are calling it Revolution 0.20 or 2.0. And
okay.
so this is why a lot of what's happening, Pluto and Saturn are indicators of these cyclic changes for